going to do today is, if you've come to one of my signings before, you'll be expecting this. I'm going to blab at you. This is kind of how this goes. I am going to give a little talk. I'm university trained. You give me a microphone. I will talk on something. And then we will do a Q&A that you can ask questions of either one of us. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to take a break and and get a drink and rest while Jason does a reading for you, and then I will come back and do a reading for you, and that is from Stormlight 3. So yes, a lot of people are excited about that. The reading this time, because I wanted one that would work really well if people hadn't read the first books, that wouldn't spoil things. It's a little shorter, but it's a nice tidbit. So the reading's about 7 minutes long or something like that. And so, yeah, I appreciate you guys coming out to see us. When Jason heard I was coming to San Francisco, he emailed me. He's a good friend. He's like, so, can I crash the party? I did this a lot when I was a neurowriter. Some of you may have seen me. Did anyone come here to see me when I was touring with Dave and Lee Modesitt? I think I came here. Yeah, Dave Wolverton. Yeah, Dave Wolverton and I came here, and that was me just kind of crashing his party. Dave, take me on tour. So let's talk about something. I was talking with a fan recently about an idea, and it really got me thinking. It's actually an idea from classic Greek philosophy. You're grinning. Did you come to the talk about...
I'm just excited.
Oh, okay. If you've come to these before, you never know what you're going to get. Last time was ancient Korean history and how it relates to science fiction and fantasy fandom. So yeah, you never know what you're going to get. Today you're getting Greek, because I actually I took a bunch of philosophy classes when I was in college. And I was thinking about being a philosophy major until I realized the only thing more pretentious than a wannabe writer is a wannabe philosopher. So I just decided to go stay with the writing thing. I can do that. But I love a lot of the concepts. You see them coming out in my books. One of the concepts that was really interesting to me, I'm not sure I 100% agree with it, but it was really interesting, was the concept of telos. Do you guys know telos? There's some philosophy, yeah. So telos is this cool Greek concept where it kind of means like purpose. They would talk about this idea that an object has a telos. A hammer has a telos. What is the telos? The purpose of a hammer? It's for pounding nails. What's the telos of a chair? It's for sitting in. These sorts of things. Sounds very simple, but a lot of the philosophical concepts are, because they allow you to have a discussion where you're like, all right, we know what the telos of, a bottle of water is. What's the telos of a doctor? You're like, okay, we can talk about this. Professions. A doctor is to heal people. What is the telos of a bookseller? It's to get books into people's hands and things like this. Once we start talking about this, it leads you down this idea of, can't you have a telos that gets corrupted? A telos that gets corrupted? Thank you, Jason.
My telos.
Your telos. Yeah, Jason's telos. Jason, for those who don't know, is a major figure in the Wheel of Time fandom for many years. And so I'm used to kind of ordering Jason around because he would be my minion at different conventions and things. The first time I met him was actually it was in Sacramento.
No, not Sacramento. I think it was San Rafael.
Okay.
Santa Rosa.
When I'd just been announced as a Wheel of Time, taking over the Wheel of Time, and Jason showed up with a backpack full of magic cards.
You're stealing my story.
Oh, okay.
I have something for them.
Okay, I won't tell the story. So telos, you can start talking about how maybe something's purpose might get corrupted. For instance, the Greek philosophers would say, okay, a chair's telos is to hold people up. If you make a beautiful chair that can't then withstand people sitting in it, you have corrupted the telos of a chair. You have brought in a different telos, and then you say, if a doctor feels that their purpose is to get money, that is a corruption of the telos of the doctor and these sorts of things. It allows you to discuss and try to figure out what is the purpose of some of these more lofty ideas. The thing about this is, we were having this conversation about telos, and I'd never actually stopped to think, what is the telos of a fantasy writer? Right? I hadn't actually thought about that. And, the telos of a doctor is pretty obvious, but what is the telos of a fantasy writer? And this sent me, as maybe it did a little too much, spiraling down a pathway of questions and thoughts and things like that. So I was trying to figure out, what's the telos of a fantasy writer, right? The first thing I thought of was to teach, right? To instruct. Maybe that's the purpose of a writer in general, is to instruct. But I don't know if that's my telos, at least with my books. How many of you guys know about Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and kind of their disagreements on this topic? They were very good friends. They were in a writing group together. And if you've read C.S. Lewis, you know how he feels the telos of a writer to be, right? You read that and you will get a message. He felt that stories should be didactic. And it was very important to him in his writing. Tolkien, on the other hand, if you read interviews with Tolkien, he would resist any attempt by someone to pin down what the meaning of the stories was. People would say, you were in World War I. This feels like a metaphor for World War I. He'd say, nope, absolutely not. Not a metaphor for World War I. They'd be like, it really looks like a metaphor for World War I. He would resist anyone trying to come up with a meaning for his stories other than the one that he gave, which is, this is a story that is a fantastical mythology for Great Britain. But he resisted all of this. He didn't want his stories to be pinned down on what are they teaching, and things like that. And I think about that with my own writing, and I certainly don't go into the writing saying, I'm going to teach people a lesson. I go in saying, who is this person I want to write about? What are they passionate about? And how can, in experiencing this person's life, we just kind of get to know them? So I don't know. I do like that stories can teach, but I'm not sure if that's my telos. So the other end of that is the idea is maybe the telos is entertainment. And I don't think that escapism is a bad word. As much as my master's degree tried to get me to believe differently, I think that there is a wonderful aspect to entertainment and escapism in fiction. I love that people come to me, basically, every signing someone says, when I have a hard day at work, and my life is crummy, and things are going poorly, I come home and I read about Kaladin. And his life is crummy too, but there's something about it that makes me feel better. There's something about going another place with the entertainment that is important to us. It's useful to us. That is why I became, I think, a fantasy reader in the first place. At the same time, though, I don't know if entertainment is a fantasy writer's telos. Maybe it is, but I think about fantasy and science fiction stories that I've loved, and there are really great ones that are not very entertaining. I think my favorite short story of all time is Harrison Bergeron by Kurt Vonnegut. If you haven't read it, it's great, but it is not entertaining. You read that story and you walk away feeling, I just got punched in the stomach. I don't know what that was. It's kind of awesome getting punched in the stomach, though, so don't worry. And I like writing things like that as well, right? Where some parts of it might have meaning, but they don't have to necessarily be entertaining. So I wasn't convinced on that. And so the third thing I came up with is maybe my telos as a writer is taking people a new place, to a new world. This is like the core of what I think makes fantasy work, is our desire to explore, to go someplace new. If you look at the top best-selling, that's for books, the most viewed movies of all time, the highest grossing films of all time, you'll find that almost all of them take us to a new place, or at least a new time, something very dramatic in time, something very different from our lives. And that's very consistent throughout all the film industry. There's something about human beings that love to explore, when I picked up the first fantasy book, that's what grabbed me. I won't go over it again. You guys all know my story. At least if you come to my talks, I've mentioned it many times. But I didn't enjoy books, and a teacher kind of force-fed me a fantasy novel, Dragon's Vein by Barbara Hambly, and I fell absolutely in love with this book. And it wasn't that people hadn't force-fed me books before. They kept trying over and over again. But I was bored by all those books that they tried to give me, and this one instead grabbed me. I love the wonder and adventure of going someplace new in fiction. I thought, is that it? Is that what my telos is to take people to a new place? I really don't know. But it relates to something that my son was saying to me recently. He's 6 years old. He has figured out that I am a writer, right? Like, he's starting to understand what it means. Like, sometimes he will walk up to people that we're not even near and say, "My dad's famous," which is embarrassing because they expect me to be really actually famous, and not like mini famous, not writer famous. But he knows that the books are the thing. In fact, what happens is we get shipped. Every time I publish a book or a new edition comes out or something, the publisher sends me like 20 or 40 copies or whatever, and we put them in the garage on these racks. And when people come to visit, we take them to the garage and we give them copies of books that they don't have. We're like, "Here, you take some books." My 6-year-old figured out that these are my books, and he thinks that's all the books that there are, right? He thinks this is the bookstore that people get my books at, and this is how we make our living. He really does. He thinks I make our living by selling books out of my garage. And he talked to me, and he's like, "I understand it." And then he said, "I want to put a book in the garage," which was super cute. And I'm like, "Oh, because he was talking about how I support the family with the books," and he's like, "I want to put a book out." I'm like, "Oh, you want to help support the family? I can encourage that." He went and wrote a book about Minecraft. Steve from Minecraft's house gets blown up by a creeper, and then he has to build a new one, and that's his story. He wrote it and is illustrating it. And I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe we'll get like 5 copies, and then when people come, we'll give them one of those, and then they kind of slip it back to me or put it back on the stack. Because he said, "You've got to have a big stack of them like yours." And after we were working on this, I said, "So, I understand you want to help support the family." He's like, No, I don't. I just want people to read my book." Which was a really kind of simple take on this thing that I had been thinking about. I'm like, what's my telos, right? Greek philosophy. And here my 6-year-old, as Socrates would love, just kind of takes me down and says, "No, I just want my book to be read." And there's definitely something to that. There is something to the idea that art, maybe we sometimes take a little too much time thinking about what's the point and miss the point entirely. My son, not knowing it, was kind of quoting Oscar Wilde. Do you guys ever read The Picture of Dorian Gray? Picture of Dorian Gray, my favorite part about it is actually the foreword, which has nothing to do with the story. It's just this great one-page philosophical work that has stuck with me ever since I read it. And I'm gonna read you a little excerpt here. Oscar Wilde says, All art is at once surface and symbol. Those who go beneath the surface do so at their peril. Those who read the symbol do so at their peril. It is the spectator and not life that art really mirrors. We can forgive a man for making a useful thing as long as he does not admire it. The only excuse for making a useless thing is that one admires it intensely. All art is quite useless. I love that. I love what he's getting at. Like, he was able to be so kind of, it sounds flippant, but when you think about it, it's profound. That art is about something that is useless yet admired. And I think maybe I missed the point a little bit, trying to discover what is my telos. Because as Oscar Wilde says, art reflects the reader. more sometimes in a way that reflects the writer. And this is something I truly believe. I believe that when you pick up a book, you have power of line item veto, right? You can be like, nope, that didn't happen. And you have the ability to edit it in your mind. This is where Hoyd came from, for those wondering. The Hoyd started as a character I inserted into the Dragon Riders of Pern that was doing things behind the scenes as I read them, and then jumped to other books as I read them. I'm like, oh, that's Hoyd right there. And they don't know what he's doing. That is the origins of this characters. I was taking ownership of these books written by somebody else and inserting my own story into them. And I believe that this is a fundamental ability of fiction. This is what separates fiction from going to a film. I believe that fiction, and I love films, but I think fiction is participatory art. I think that when you pick up that book, it becomes yours. And however you want to pronounce the character names, that is right in your version of the book. You are now the director. I gave you a script, but it's not done until you read it. It becomes a reflection of you. And so I think, honestly, that's my telos. My telos is to give you something that you can use to then make art for yourselves. I jumpstart it. You can take it and imagine it. The descriptions are only kind of stepping boards to something you are going to create when you read the stories. And so I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity, for making my stories live by taking them and imagining them in different ways from the way I would have imagined them. It is awesome, it is amazing, and I think it is my purpose is to provide this for you. So thank you so much.